everybody, welcome to the Hafu It. I'm Kyoko.
I'm Sakura.
And today we're talking about being mixed.
Yes.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. We're both very excited to talk about this subject.
Yeah, we've been waiting a long time to get into this podcast.
Yes.
So I'm super excited.
I'm super excited.
I hope you're all excited to get into it.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, so Sakura and I are both what would be termed between Hafu, Hapa. We are mixed race Japanese Canadians.
We are. And what exactly is your mix, Kyoko?
Yeah, I am just a quarter Japanese. I'm also... She's just part. She's quarter Japanese, quarter Scottish, quarter Ukrainian, and I've been told that the last quarter is a whole other, like, hodgepodge of different cultures.
Right.
Yeah.
So super mixed race.
Super mixed race.
Yes.
Very much identifying more so with the Japanese side.
Of course.
Yeah. How about you?
Yes. My mixture is half Japanese on my father's side, and then on my mother's side, I am a quarter Scottish and a quarter French Canadian.
Oh, wow.
But like you said, I definitely resonate more with being Japanese, and I definitely identify as a Japanese woman as well as a mixed race Japanese woman.
Mm. Yeah, I was first introduced to the term Hapa, which was just like the first time in my life that I'd ever heard anything beyond just explaining to people that I was part Japanese.
100%, yeah.
And it wasn't until very recently that I was introduced to the term Hafu.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm aware, those are kind of like the two most mainstream terms for being part Asian, part Caucasian.
Yes.
Hafu, obviously, specifically on the Japanese end.
Right.
And Hapa being a lot more inclusive in terms of which part of Asia, because there's so much.
There's so much, yeah. Totally.
Yeah,
I think I first started hearing the word Hapa at a fairly young age. And kind of, I misinterpreted it when I first heard it. I didn't think it was Hapa. I thought it was Hafa.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then learning a little bit later on that it's actually Hapa and not Hafa. But yeah, I had a few Japanese people in my life growing up here in Canada who were of an older generation, and even they used the term Hapa.
Yeah.
So I had definitely had it in my life at a really early stage. But it's interesting, I didn't know the origin of the word. To me, it didn't sound like a fully Japanese word. Mm-hmm. So I was always kind of like intrigued with where Hapa came from. And was kind of like intrigued on how an older community that didn't necessarily have a lot of mixed race Japanese had this word so ingrained already in their vocabulary.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was first introduced to Hapa through Jeff Chiba Stearns, who's a Japanese-Canadian filmmaker.
We love Jeff Chiba.
We love Jeff Chiba. Yeah, he made a film quite a few years ago called One Big Hapa Family.
Right.
And I think that was actually probably one of the first mainstream media productions that brought the term Hapa into the mainstream language, at least in Canada, at least in North America.
Definitely.
Beyond Hawaii, of course, because Hapa is a Hawaiian originated term.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. And that was definitely like the first time that I'd ever heard a term that explained to me who I was outside of just saying to someone, oh, I'm quarter Japanese, and like having to go into your full breakdown, like an
every
Excel
time,
sheet
yeah, totally.
of like your identity. And being given the term Hapa for me was like almost like putting on like an expensive gown, like a gown that like you couldn't really afford, but that like really like suited you.
Yes.
It was like going prom dress shopping.
Yes, and you're like, this is the one.
This was the one.
Yeah.
And I have been using it ever since. And I only like heard of Hafu literally within the last year, actually, probably since you and I first met a year ago.
Right.
I was interested to know what some of the origins were for that. Do you have any idea where Hapa came from?
Well, outside of just knowing that it is a Pacific Islander term that was originally created for people of Pacific Island descent mixed with foreigner blood, which is generally kind of strictly European blood.
Yeah.
How it actually got its way to Canada and how it was adopted by the Japanese community specifically, that I'm still very unaware of.
Yeah.
The term Hafu, I know, came kind of around the 1970s in Japan, and where terms like Hapa are originally a negative term for people who are mixed race, Hafu started out not that way. And in most cultures, generally the terms for mixed race people are negative or derogatory terms. So I personally am now starting to get a little bit more, I guess, comfortable with calling myself just Hafu and removing Hapa from my vocabulary. But one of the reasons why I love Hapa is so inclusive.
Yeah.
Not just with the Japanese community, but basically anyone of Asian descent who's mixed with, it doesn't even have to be European blood, mixed with any other race. You're a part of the Hapa community. So there is a part of it that I really enjoy in terms of building and growing a very diverse community of mixed race people. But if there are people out there that find Hapa to still kind of have negative emotions connected to it or still affect you in a negative way, I think that should definitely be talked about.
Yeah.
And it isn't originally our term, so if it is something that is to the Pacific Islander community still seen as a negative word, it's maybe something that should be looked at by the Canadian Hapa community.
Yeah, I definitely heard about a lot of that. I had no idea that there was some kind of history with that term until I heard that there was another term, which was Hafu, for specifically the Japanese mixed race community. And then, did some research and kind of looked into it. And from what I understand of that term, at least, like, some Pacific Islanders still see it as something that is wholly, like, a very wholesome term, or at least that's how it had started out.
Right.
And then it was, like, the presence of some settlers that coined it into a term that was derogatory.
Right.
And something meant to be discriminatory rather than something to be embraced and to welcome you into a community.
Right.
So that's how I felt when I heard that term. I was like, finally there was something that I could tell people that was a physical term. Because I heard that, like, Tiger Woods came up with his own term for, like, his specific mix.
Right.
And that was, like, some people were, like, for it, and some people were like, oh, hell no. Like, please don't do that. But I totally understand where that comes from, because for me, I was always, and, like, I like the term Hafu, however, it doesn't acknowledge the other, like, mixed parts of who I am.
Right.
And so even though I primarily identify, like, when people ask me about my mixed nationality or, like, cultural heritage, I usually just say Japanese. Hafu doesn't necessarily acknowledge the other mix, I suppose.
Right.
And that's why Hapa, to me at least, feels almost like a little bit more comforting.
Right.
It, like, also because it's so inclusive, like, there are events like Hapapalooza in Vancouver.
Yes.
And
definitely.
like at the Powell Street Festival, and you are so much just part of this community of people who get your strife, who, like, totally understand your struggle with, like, imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Like, feeling that you're an imposter of a race that you're definitely genetically part of.
That your family is a part of, your family tree is a part of.
You got ancestors down there.
Yeah. And I think, too, because the term Hafu, if you, like, break it down, it is referring to people who are half Japanese. And that's something that is always kind of, I want to move away from, having people having to kind of give a percentage in terms of how Japanese they are. And so having something be like half Japanese exclusive, if you are someone who's a quarter Japanese or 3/4 Japanese, would you feel comfortable using the term Hafu, where Hapa has nothing to do with what percentage you are Asian. It's just the fact that you are mixed race Asian that makes you Hapa.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily view the word Hafu as being specifically half Japanese people, but that's, if you look up the definition of Hafu, say on Google, that's what it comes up as.
Yeah.
And I think that in itself is very discriminative to people who are mixed race that are outside of that half.
Yeah. From my understanding of that too, like Japan itself, like the people in Japan are actually pretty discriminatory towards Hafus themselves, and are very into instead like the look of the Hafu.
Yes.
Right? Like obsessed with the way that mixed Japanese people look. But not so accepting of like as a Hafu, you can't actually apply for citizenship in Japan.
Yeah.
Like you're not really acknowledged as a Japanese person.
Yes.
You're just acknowledged for inheriting some traits of like your Japanese ancestry.
Yes.
And that in of itself is wild. I was looking into some of the history of that, because it's the idea of Japanese purity, right?
100%, yeah.
And I was reading that, I think like one of the earliest Japanese texts that was found in like the 8th century was written about where the Japanese people came from. And it was like centering on kind of, and this has been debated amongst scholars for like hundreds of years by now, for sure.
Yeah.
Done in the 8th century, and it was writing about how way in the beginning, the god of the sun in Japan, who I think first name is Amaterasu. Naruto fans will recognize that.
Oh my
god. Anyway, sun god Amaterasu sent her grandson down to Earth to marry a person on Earth in Japan, and that happened to be the emperor. And so for a long time, the Japanese people believed like very clearly that the emperor was a god, like was representative of the sun god.
Yes.
And then I think I read that in World War II, or like after the defeat of Japan in World War II, Emperor Hirohito came out and was like, I am not a god.
Oh,
and the people were like, what? And so ends the idea of Japanese purity, and like having to keep the lineage so pure because it's because we're descended of the sun god.
Yeah, and you can see it all the way back into like feudal Japan. Japan, for a very, very tiny period, allowed foreigners in for trade. Yeah. And then the second they saw any sort of foreign influence, they immediately shut the whole country down.
Yeah.
No foreigners were allowed back into the country. I think they had one small remote island, like way in the middle of nowhere, that they allowed some trade, but definitely not on any main island in Japan. And I think that also showcases this want to keep the Japanese bloodline and the Japanese culture very pure of any sort of foreign influence.
Yeah, I think that was the Tokugawa shogunate or something like that. And it was like 200 years, and there were
isolation.
Of complete isolation, no imports, exports. But that's totally a testament to why Japan is so self-sufficient from the rest of the world. Like there's so many more exports from Japan than what they have imported,
right?
Probably as a result of that. And it's definitely something that I think is honorable. I think it's super impressive that they managed to get away with that. But obviously there are a lot of different like old age philosophies that came out of that.
Definitely in terms of like technology and in terms of keeping up with like the Western world on that front, Japan quickly like got right in line with everything. But I do find a lot of the kind of societal things in Japan to be a little unprogressive and potentially a little bit dated, such as their view of mixed race people.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's like an interesting addition to that conversation on that end, and talking about like the way that the Japanese people feel about that in Japan. Because in Jeff Chiba's film, One Big Happy Family, it was introduced the idea that after the war here in Canada, the Japanese elders actually like wanted nothing more than for their children to marry and have children with
and
white
to integrate
people.
Into Canadian culture.
To be as like little to look as to not look as Japanese as possible.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah, to be as white as possible.
Yeah. So to escape some like levels of racism, which is interesting because that introduces a whole other level of racism, on the sense that people who are mixed race like either do or do not represent like their mix.
Right.
Yeah. And if you don't look, or most of us don't look white enough, most of us don't look Japanese enough, if
100%,
you're different look, or mix at all, like you just don't, you're not enough of one or the other to call yourself one or the other.
100%.
And when you grow up and to everyone else you're one big question mark, how are you supposed to grow up and not feel like you are one big question mark?
Exactly.
So it's so freeing to be given a term like Hapa or Hafu, and like I know that not everybody feels that way, but I think it's really important not necessarily to like coin terms for it, but that there are being like these things are being discussed more so, and newer events like Hapapalooza that are starting to happen that bring mixed race people together, and show mixed race people, at least here in Canada, that your struggles are not necessarily unique to you. There are people that you can talk to about it. It's super important. Yeah.
I think if anything, just having a term like Hapa is just something that we're able to find one another with. I felt so isolated growing up as a Hapa in Canada because I did not have a lot of other mixed race, just Asians in general, not necessarily Japanese, but just no mixed race Asians in general in my life. So you grow up having people not know what you are and not being able to identify you, and then you can't find anyone that looks like you or anyone who you feel you remotely identify to. So I think having the word Hapa, being able to look it up and being able to find other people in the community through that word has been super healing, in the sense of I don't feel so alone anymore, and I don't feel like such a freak anymore.
Did you ever feel like you had to, like, earn your last name? Because you and I both have our Japanese last names.
Yes.
Which I know is not actually common, like, in Japan.
It's super uncommon.
You inherit your other, like, side's name. I get Sugimoto, and you get Yoshida. I always felt, I mean, mind you, like, my great-grandfather, who was Japanese, he was our first gen in my family. It was super important to him that we get the last name Sugimoto, but, like, maybe it was just, like, that sense of importance that made me feel so hard, like I had to earn that last name. By being more Japanese. But again, like, how much more Japanese can you be? Like, being mixed race isn't just about what's in your blood. It's like in the culture, it's in your practices, it's in the way that you live your life.
Definitely.
I for like a long time when I was growing up definitely felt like I needed to live up to what that name was, which was so hilarious because I had no idea what that name was. Like, we had no idea what our lineage was like in Japan. It was never spoken about, never encouraged. So interesting to be like where I am in my life now and like know what I do now about my family. Knowing that I don't have to try to live up to that name. It's just part of who I am. It's in my it's in my makeup, my genetic makeup.
I don't know if I necessarily felt like I needed to prove myself to the name, but I definitely knew that I had to honor the name, and that everything that I did would be reflected upon the name. Yeah. So I always had to do everything to kind of like the highest level to not dishonor my family's name. Yeah. I personally, like, I've thought about this over and over again. If I ever do get married, I would never take the name unless, like, my partner was Japanese. I would never let go of my name to adopt someone else's name. My last name means so much to me. It is such a big part of my identity. And it's something I'm so proud of. So proud of. But I do feel sometimes when people see my last name and then they look at me and I don't automatically look like what they're imagining in their brains. Yeah. I do feel like I almost need to like step up the Japanese-ness and just be like, I don't know, like...
It's almost like coming out as a race, right? Like you almost like have to come out of the closet and be like...
And like prove yourself like I am Japanese. Yeah. Like, yeah, totally.
And that like is sometimes definitely like a privilege that mixed race people have. And like not every mixed race person is as like mixed appearing, I suppose.
True. Yeah.
Like not everyone is also mixed with a Caucasian background. You know, I was thinking exactly about how, like the name Sugimoto is what colors me. It's what makes me come out of the closet as someone who is of Japanese ancestry. Yes. It's something that defines who I am to somebody once they know what that name is.
Yes.
But I am definitely like lucky enough that I'm not subject to the same experiences that a lot of other people do, or that full Japanese people do.
Yeah.
Because of that. But yeah, as soon as like people know what my last name is, that it's definitely something that means something to you, but it makes you a different person to somebody else.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, and I think with like what's going on in the world, especially what's going on in America right now with the Asian community and the violence that the Asian American community is experiencing during coronavirus at the moment, I do have to acknowledge that the fact that I am not full Japanese looking does award me privileges in the sense that I don't have to worry so much about violence being done to me by people who are not aware of my name or aware of my last name or haven't like really taken a really good look at me. That is a privilege. But as part of that is also the reason why a lot of full-blooded Asians don't really consider people who are mixed race Asian to be Asian because we don't have those similar experiences with them. So it's an interesting thing because I have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
I have to acknowledge that I don't experience the same things that you do.
Yeah.
I have my own experiences and my own things that I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But I don't think that makes me any less Asian.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about this before, but like calling yourself a person of color when you're a mixed race person, like that's a whole other issue that I think is just not really talked about.
It's not talked about.
And like you and I have talked about how like you and I have both at some point in our lives like not felt like we deserve to wear that coat.
Yes.
Because we don't share full-bloodedness with our Japanese side.
Totally.
Or that we look too white to call ourselves people of color.
Right.
And that again has to do with like the obsession over what percentage of that nationality are you?
Exactly.
What percentage of like your freaking cultural heritage do you have?
Right.
And you're like, well, but it is like it's in my genetic code, like it's who I am.
Yeah.
And like I still struggle a lot with that and I need constant reassurance for it and it's something that I feel awful about.
Right.
But yeah, I wish that more mixed race people would talk about that and talking about what like gives you that hat.
Definitely. And not just like just all mixed race people, because it's so funny, no matter what your mix is, all mixed race people have the same experience of feeling like you have to prove yourself to full-blooded members of your community.
Yeah.
Instead of you just being able to live your identity, which is what you are. You're not making anything up. This is just what it is. I have no control over it.
Yeah.
This is my blood. This is my family. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know even, like, our friend Amanda, who's, like, full Chinese, has told us even, like, her experience in school in terms of, like, on the cultural spectrum of all of that, is that, like, when you're part of a colored community, you are, at least here in Canada, like, there have been so many circumstances that have led our families to teach us to be more white.
Yes.
To be less of our heritage.
Yes.
So that we can fit in better.
100%.
To avoid that, like, that treatment.
Yes.
But even she was saying, like, someone who's not mixed race never felt Asian enough to hang out with the Asian crowd, never felt white enough to hang out with her white friends.
Totally.
And where does that place you?
Yeah.
And, like, Canada is such a, like, people think that we're so well-rounded because we have this massive multicultural community, like, no matter where you are, there's people from all over.
Right.
But a result of that are people who are mixed race. But there's definitely, like, not enough talk, not enough education around what to do with that.
Yeah, and that's so interesting that you bring up someone who is fully Asian, growing up in Canada and still not feeling Asian enough.
Yeah.
Like, just hearing that phrase come out of my mouth just sounds like crazy.
Yeah.
Because, like, you are Asian.
Yeah.
There's nothing else. Like, you are Asian.
And it's like, if she's not Asian enough, then, like, am I Asian enough?
You know? Are any of us Asian enough? Like, what is that?
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
Yeah. And especially when, like, a lot of us have, like, one parent who's of that one race and the parent who's of the others, like, even the parents don't really know how to prepare you for your mixed race identity.
100%.
Because they only know one or the other.
Yes.
And, like, sometimes those cultures clash, and sometimes they mix so well together that there's no differentiation between them. And maybe there shouldn't be differentiation between them, but I think, at least in, like, my experience, like, I would have appreciated, like, the only introduction that I ever got to, like, our Japanese culture, and it was super important to my dad that I did get that, was whenever I visited my great-grandparents.
Right.
But that's, like, not my mom's fault.
Right.
Like, she's a white lady. I learned about pierogies.
You know, you got that Ukrainian side going on.
Yeah, we learned about potatoes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like, learning about everything else, and, like, I think it's so funny because I didn't grow up with a lot of other mixed race people, let alone mixed race Japanese people.
Right.
Hafus, mixed race Asian people. I know it was like one or the other where I grew up. And I grew up in Toronto.
Right.
So to come out and, like, meet you, and, like, you were probably one of the first mixed race Asian people that I ever met, it's almost like a trigger and, like, something in my head completely unlocked.
Yes.
And then all of these experiences that I had with, like, mochi and how I learned to make sushi and, like, these learning to play the song Sakura on my violin in school,
love that.
Like, come, like, crashing back. But it's like, these are experiences that are so unique to your mixed race identity that they're not really things that you can share with your friends who are not mixed race.
Totally.
Because they don't really get it.
Yeah.
At least not in that way.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, growing up in Vancouver and on the West Coast, when I did move back into Vancouver after being out of Vancouver for quite a while, I was so surprised to see how many mixed race people, mixed race Asians are actually in Vancouver. And it was so funny. Every mixed race person I've ever met, it almost feels like I'm meeting a sibling. Like, it's almost like I'm meeting a member of my family. There's just this weird connection that I have with almost just, like, any mixed race person. So even me not growing up with a lot of mixed race people in my life, there's still something that connects all of us. There's still so many shared experiences that we all have, and it makes me feel so close to everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was something that I definitely gained, and like I'm so thankful for having moved out to Vancouver. Because in Toronto, there's definitely, like, a fair, like, Asian community.
Yes.
Especially, like, after the war, lots of, like, immigrations.
That's one of the cities we were allowed to relocate to.
Yes.
My dad was born in Toronto.
Yes. But being in Vancouver is so different because there's still, like, I mean, there's the Japanese Cultural Center in Toronto, but I guess I was too young when I was living there to really be involved with any of it, at least on my own, because it was never something that was forced onto me when I was growing up.
Right.
But being out here and now being a fully independent adult, getting a chance to meet everybody and share literally the exact same story with somebody else is such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It's almost like I don't know, you look up one day and it's not your reflection. It's something that you can physically touch and talk to and laugh with.
Yeah.
And it's so heartwarming and humbling to meet somebody else who has that experience.
Definitely.
Where the waitress sees your last name and goes, "Oh, you totally don't look that."
Right.
Yeah.
We love that. We love the unsolicited opinions about the way we look, our physical appearance.
On how Asian we look. Yeah. Or the "what are you" questions. Oh my god, here we go.
The "what are you?"
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. To be fair, though, I think that, like, and, like, I hate it, but I think that again, like, comes from, there's just, like, no education for anyone, let alone the mixed race people themselves, because, like, we're too young when that's happening to us when we're younger to correct people and to be like,
right.
What do you mean? But that's because we're not taught that.
Yes.
Let alone people who are not mixed race.
Definitely.
Like, those people have no idea how else to ask us, like, what our mix is.
Definitely.
And it's nice because we're finally coming into, and obviously there are still fights to be fought in regards to everybody's identities and what that means to each individual person outside of just your cultural heritage, but like the pieces of you that make you who you are. But I think that there's just a level of education that needs to be put out there.
Definitely.
That will probably start with Hafu's mixed race people coming out and just being more vocal about educating those people.
Yeah.
Because as much as I'd like to say, like, please don't ask me, go and educate yourself, there's just not enough resources for it.
Like, where would they do that?
Yeah, exactly. Especially for mixed race people, there's just there's nothing out there.
There's no resources.
Yeah. And to be fair, that's really just because a lot of mixed race, there are so many more mixed race people now. There's like third and fourth generations are out. Like
100%.
Yeah. Since
like below the age of 20.
Yeah.
There's a huge influx of mixed race Asian kids.
Yeah.
I think from like right now in 2020, if you were like 20 years and above, it's a little bit more less common. Mm-hmm. And then if you're like 30 and above, probably like more uncommon that there would be mixed race. So that's also really exciting because the younger generation is so vocal and everyone's so connected on social media. They have a larger platform and more access to things that we did in our childhood. But I think one of the reasons why when I was a kid, I never corrected people when they said things like, "Oh, well, you don't look Japanese," and this is coming from like a white person who has no idea what they're talking about. I felt so insecure about being only half Japanese, and I felt so insecure about my Asian identity that they were almost driving the point home. You are not that.
Yeah.
You are not what you think you are. You are,
Oh, yeah.
It was almost like my internal thoughts and my internal voice was now on the outside being spoken to me. And because I had so much shame around being mixed, I just didn't feel like I had a place to be like, you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But now, as a fully confident mixed race Asian woman, I know who I am and I know what I am, and I'm steadfast with that, and I have the power now, and I'm in the position now to correct people when they say stuff like that because they're wrong.
Yeah, just straight up like that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the day when I'm a lot more confident about that.
Yeah.
I've only been, I think, involved in, I think, the Japanese Canadian community, at least like as an independent adult.
Yes.
For the last year. And that's been the most inclusive year to my memory.
Yeah.
And I love it so much. I love, like, last year I went to the Japanese Canadian Christmas festival, the Christmas market.
The Christmas market.
And even just walking around, like, seeing so many other hafus and hapas,
yes.
And even just people who are not mixed race who were there for their elderly, like, mother who, like, couldn't be there to sell their craft artisan things, talking about just being Japanese was something so new to me.
Right.
I don't think I'll ever get enough of it.
Yeah.
Talk more about being Japanese.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I grew up a majority of my life in the Okanagan in Kelowna, and there was no sort of Japanese culture up there whatsoever. A few of the internment camps were in the interior, so there was a small Japanese population, but they were of a much older generation. Mm-hmm. So there weren't a lot of youth. And when I was around my community in the Okanagan, because of the age difference and because no one was mixed race, I still felt like really out of place. Mm-hmm. So when I went to like Japanese festivals that were held, say at the Buddhist temple, I would feel like a tourist. I wouldn't have that feeling of, oh, these are my people, like I belong here. And yeah, it wasn't until I was an adult and off on my own and really investigating what it meant personally to me to be a part of the community and to be Japanese, and finally coming to terms with the fact that I'm mixed race, that I could actually enjoy myself at festivals and feel like this is where I belong, these are my people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah, I think a lot of mixed race people struggle with like imposter syndrome.
100, yeah.
Just feeling like you don't belong in your own skin.
Yeah.
And it's sad that comes from both ends, like both mixes. At least like in ours, in Hafus and Hapas, it comes from your white side in that you're not
white.
Yeah, you're not white.
So...
And it comes from your Japanese side, your Asian side, because there's so much like anti-white supremacy, of course. Like, I mean, appropriately so.
Yes.
In most cases... from the Asian side, that you're not Asian either. Have you ever been dressed in a yukata or a kimono?
Yes, I've been dressed in a yukata. Yeah. When
I was younger, so in Toronto, at least when I was a young girl,
yes,
there was, I'm like not that old, when I was a youngin'.
Like 4 years ago.
Like 10 years ago. There, we had like graduations because we had elementary school, then middle school, then high school, and then like you go up to post-secondary.
Right.
And for us, we had graduations at the end of each of these stages of our lives. So we had a graduation in grade 6, and then I had a graduation in grade 8, and then I had my high school graduation. For my middle school graduation, in grade 8, I remember I was like looking around for a dress, and it's always been, like, being Japanese has always been a part of who I am.
Of course.
And I remember thinking it would be so cool to show up to that graduation in a kimono or in a yukata.
Yes.
And my great-grandmother was so excited when she found out, and she was like, oh, I've had this. She, like, pulled out this beautiful box.
Oh, my God.
That had this beautiful yukata that she had bought from one of her trips to Japan with my great-grandfather. And she, like, pulled it out, and she, like, fully dressed me in it. What a process, by the way.
What a process.
brava to those who can just do it, because there are so many pieces.
There's
and
so
how
many
do you know
layers.
where they go? It's a puzzle.
Yes.
But yeah, she fully dressed me in it, and I remember I like looked at myself in the mirror and I forced a smile on my face, but I remember the first thought in my head was like, you shouldn't be in this.
Oh.
And then I scared myself out of wearing it to school because I was like, well, if I don't think that I look good in this, then like, and it was obvious, it was more than looking good. It was just like, I didn't want to be an appropriation of my own culture, but yeah, I like scared myself out of wearing a yukata or a kimono to my graduation because I just didn't feel like it should be on my body.
And it's like your family's too. Yeah, it's like your ancestors.
It was ours.
Yeah.
So she took it off of me, and I kind of was like, yeah, I'll think about it. And I haven't put one on since, and it's just like for no other reason than like I haven't really put a lot of thought into it.
Right.
But again, those are just like not things that you talk about with most of your friends because I don't have a lot of Japanese friends. In fact, I think you're my only Japanese friend. Currently.
Yes.
Here we go. But yeah, even going to the like Powell Street Festival or any of the Japanese Canadian festivals that happen here.
Yes.
And you always see the yukata booth, you always see the kimono booth at the Nikkei Center. There's always lessons. On how to put one on, and it just never feels right. It always feels weird to touch them and to like do that.
Right.
And I don't think that's been necessarily like ingrained into me through anything. Like no one's ever encouraged that thought into my head.
Right.
I think it comes from like growing up in like a mostly white community.
Definitely. Yeah.
And you grew up in a pretty, like, white community, too.
I grew up in, like, I would say at the time, it was over 95% Caucasian. I looked at kind of, like, the breakdown in the early 2000 teens, and it was at 95% Caucasian. So I think when I lived there, it was probably more like 97% Caucasian. So I was the only Japanese person in my life. Yeah. Oddly enough, because I was in karate, I did have another half Japanese girl named Suki. If you're watching this, shout out to Suki. Suki Naka. Who was had a Japanese father and a white mother, so we were the exact same mix. But for some reason, my parents like never made us hang out. They never made that happen. So I saw her like at the dojo, and that was about it. Yeah. But yeah, similar situation. I remember the first time I tried on any piece of traditional Japanese formal wear and just feeling like I'm not worthy. Like I'm not worthy to wear this.
Yeah.
I think I've like kind of grown out of that. Now I get super excited when I see traditional Japanese garments, but you do have that visceral feeling when you are a mixed race Japanese person that I shouldn't wear this.
Yeah.
Like this isn't for me.
Yeah, you're like picturing those like obachans like
100%.
Looking at you and they're like, what are you doing wearing this?
What is she doing wearing that? And it's like,
Yeah. When I was actually in Japan, one of the things that I refused to go home without was just like a kimono.
Yes.
I wanted a kimono. I just wanted the top piece.
Yeah.
I just wanted one to wear around the house or for the next time we went to Powell Street Festival.
Yes.
And then COVID happened. But however, I did leave with one, and actually it was like in a Japanese version of a thrift store. It was great. And this little Oba-san was at the back, and I felt really nervous about it, and I was like trying not to touch anything, but I was trying to like look with my eyes, but all the patterns start to blend in together, and she came up to me, and obviously like I don't look like I'm like from Japan.
Fair enough.
But she was so nice to me, and she was like, yes, like this is how it should fit, this is how you wear it. Just very helpful. And, like, knew enough English to, like, understand, I guess. I was, like, telling her that I was mixed race, and she was like, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Where are you from? Canada. Everybody loves Canada.
Everyone loves Canada, let's be real.
So there's that. But, yeah, I finally, like, I left with, like, my first piece of Japanese, like, clothing that I actually felt really good in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting to overcome stuff like that. And I grew up in a pretty, like, white community, too. Or, like, I think, mind you, though, I remember everyone always complimented my last name.
Yes.
It was always, like, a compliment.
Yes.
And, like, there's nicknames that come along with your last name that are just very... I love nicknames for me.
Yes.
Because I've never liked my first name.
Me neither.
My birth name.
Yeah.
So it was nice to be called Sugi.
Yes. I was called Yoshi.
Yes. Yeah. It's just another, like, piece of your identity that, like, made you feel so giddy as a child. But along with that came all of the, like, manga freaks and, like, anime freaks who wanted to be your friend and asked you if you'd watch this anime.
Specifically because you were Japanese.
Specifically because you're Japanese.
They hunted you down. They saw that last name and they were like, where is she?
They were like, well, you found the manga club.
Yeah. Oh my god.
And she did.
And she did.
She did.
Oh my god.
And we read Naruto.
Just educating the people.
Yeah. No, yeah, I actually, like, got into manga and anime through my otaku friends. Yeah. My gaijin friends.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was good, thanks to those friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would never have known that because I did not... My mom was white, so...
Totally.
She did not know.
Yes.
And I did not live with my dad.
Yes.
And also, I think he was probably too old for manga and anime.
Yeah.
I don't think his generation, like, got a lot of that. They got all the, like, old kung fu movies and...
Totally.
Stuff like that instead, so...
Yes.
It's their own version of all of that.
Well, I think that kind of, like, showcases something, because us in the Japanese-Canadian community having to always... perpetuate this, like, white idea of, like, how you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to act. It kind of makes us not search out those things in our community, while the white people in Canada, they can freely immerse themselves in Japanese culture without a fear of that affecting them in any sort of negative way.
Yeah.
Where us being Japanese and not knowing things in white culture and just knowing stuff in our culture would put us at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Learning our language and having an accent would put us at a disadvantage. Than, say, like a Westerner who's learning Japanese. That would not affect them in any way, shape, or form. So I definitely noticed that there were a lot of white kids in Kelowna that I used to say were, like, more Japanese than I am.
Yeah.
Because they were just obsessed with Japanese culture. Kind of on a fetishy level, but obsessed with Japanese culture. And then I was always like, well, I'm actually Japanese, and, like, I'm not into these things that they're into.
Yeah, oh my god.
Like,
that's a trigger.
I was like, well, yeah, what is going on here? Like,
more
what does
Japanese
this mean?
Than I am.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I would feel that. I tried to do Japanese in the high school that I was doing grade 10 to 12 in. I tried so hard, but I was the only Asian in my entire class. Obviously the only Japanese, but there wasn't even another Asian in my class, and it was literally just, like, 29 white kids that were obsessed with Japanese culture.
Yeah.
And I was like, I almost feel like the odd person out in this class.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like these people know more about my culture than I do.
Yeah.
It's such a trip. I did not last long in that class.
No,
Needless to say.
Yeah, no, people always, like, ask me questions, even now, like, about Japanese culture and stuff that I don't have the answers for.
Totally.
And it, like, makes you feel guilty. You're like, where is my Japanese dictionary in my head? Like,
right?
My catalog of knowledge.
Yes.
No, I did try to go for Japanese lessons when I was younger.
I love that.
I went for, like, 5 lessons.
Yes.
5 lessons.
5 whole lessons.
5 whole lessons. I learned how to draw. I just know how to draw
in hiragana.
Yeah, in hiragana. Yeah, I remember oyasumi nasai.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, mind you, like, I learned a lot of my Japanese from anime.
Yes. Which, honestly, like, a lot of people do.
Yeah, a lot of people do. When I was in Japan, that was, like, what I relied on.
Yeah.
And, like, it's funny, because obviously, like, Japanese is much more traditional than what you hear in anime.
Yes.
So it's fun. I was like trying to be very cautious about
right
when I was using certain terms
and who you were using it with.
Definitely, yeah. When I was like meeting my family down there, I'm so glad I had a friend there who like knew traditional Japanese,
right?
So she could like cut me off and be like, "That's not the respectful way to say that."
Oh my god!
So that I wouldn't embarrass myself too much.
That would be, like, just like me, to, like, meet my family and use all the informal, like, completely inappropriate,
yeah,
like, yeah, conjugations of everything.
Oh
like,
my god.
I can't.
Yeah, like, I know French pretty well, and I'm still,
she's a French
like,
queen.
Yeah, she's a French queen.
Yes.
That's what happens when you're on the East Coast.
Truly. When you're up against Quebec.
Yeah.
Let's be real, it's gonna happen.
Yeah, bon cop, bad cop. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I know, like, decent enough French, but I don't, like, whenever people try to speak French to me and they don't know French.
Right.
I definitely, like, you catch the same deal. Like, learning any kind of, like, new language, that's just what happens.
Right.
I even say to some people, I am a better listener in French.
Yes.
I'm much better at understanding what people are saying to me in French than I am at speaking it.
The French comprehension is next level.
She's there. She can learn an entire subject in French, but can she write the essay? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
There's that same, like, fear of just, like, not wanting words to just fall out of your mouth.
Yes.
In no particular order.
Right.
And I feel that way about Japanese, except I know way less Japanese than...
Yeah. And I think that's, like, a really interesting thing, too. Being mixed-race Japanese, not being able to speak Japanese fluently as a mixed-race Japanese person is a whole nother thing.
Oh, yeah.
The shame that I feel.
Yeah.
I was even talking about this with my brother the other day. When you meet someone who is from Japan and they find out that you're Japanese in any way, shape, or form, their first question is, do you speak Japanese? Yeah. And the answer is generally always no.
And they're asking you in Japanese?
Yes. Yeah. And you're just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It's a lot. And it happens every time.
Yeah. A customer came into work today. Yes. And she was from Japan. Yeah. And I knew before she gave me her name, but when she did, she was Japanese confirmed. Yes. And I always get the temptation to be like, oh my god, I'm part Japanese. I'm Kyoko-san. Yes. I'm Sugimoto-san. Yes. And I, like, cut myself off because I'm just like, I can't communicate in Japanese.
Right? Though. And that's what they're going to expect.
Yeah. Are they going to look at me funny? Because I can't... Obviously, like, times are changing in Japan. Like, people are so much more progressive.
The younger generation in Japan is, like, stepping up.
They're so good. Yeah.
They're on the come up.
Like, my cousin that's in Japan, she, like, can speak English. She's, like... I mean, I fully expected to be shunned because I have this teeny tiny heart tattoo on my wrist.
Right. The visible tattoo.
The visible tattoos. This is
shame.
This is before this tattoo.
Oh my gosh.
But no, she was there with, like, her bleached hair and, like, our 95-year-old great uncle, like, and nobody cared, and that was so reassuring to me because I'm by no means traditional, right? Let alone, like, the level of traditional that a lot of, like, Japanese people tend to be, especially with the older generations.
Exactly, and especially, like, outside of, like, the giant cities, like, when you go into the more, like, countryside. I just automatically assume that, like, this is not going to go over well. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So, yeah, it is nice to know that, like, even when you're outside of the city, you're still going to meet people with, like, different colored hair, like, you know?
Yeah, and I was in Japan right before COVID really became, like, a big issue. I mean, like, it was always an issue from the start, but it was not yet declared a pandemic, a global pandemic.
We weren't quite there yet.
So I was in Japan for what was supposed to be the whole month of March, and we had this whole trip planned. We were going to go from Tokyo up to Sapporo, down to Kyoto, to Osaka, into Kumamoto, which is in the southern island of Kyushu, back up to Tokyo and then home. because I was on my own journey to learn more about my roots, because that's a question that no one in my family knows about, and that's a whole other thing that we can talk about for sure too tonight. But we got called home by the Canadian government right before we got a chance to go all the way down south, and my family is from the south of Japan, and there's like a whole... It's like one of those places in Japan where nobody speaks English.
Right. We
had an Airbnb booked and they did not speak English, but they were the sweetest. And they were very excited for us. But it was just like my family that are down there definitely don't speak English.
Right.
There's no relatives that are down there. The monks certainly don't. My family has this whole temple down there that... Akira, my great uncle, who's like 95 years old in Japan, had actually arranged for me to go and visit. And the monks were going to recite a sutra for my ancestors.
Yeah.
My great grandfather included. And I was going to learn all about that, and I didn't get to go down there, and it's really, really sad.
Yeah.
But obviously when the world kind of pulls itself together,
we're going to head back.
Yeah, we're going to go back.
Yeah. We're definitely going to go back.
But we'll backtrack a little bit back to that point about our family not really like knowing a lot. Like, as a mixed race person, I think like as you get older, you have so many questions all of a sudden.
So many questions.
Yeah, you have like a new awakening. Like when you come into early adulthood, and some people it comes later or earlier or whatever. But at some point in your life, you have like a secondary identification reawakening.
Right.
When you're like, I am not just white.
Yeah.
I am not just this one mix. Like, I am this other thing too.
Yes.
Where you start to ask questions about that culture. And it's funny because you and I are both fourth generation in the Japanese-Canadian immigration into Canada.
Yeah. I'm actually third.
Oh, sorry.
Your girl's 3 generations in.
Kyoko is fourth generation.
It's because I'm like a decade older than Kyoko, so
She forgets.
I'm from a completely different generation. She old.
Anyway, because we're third and fourth generation Japanese Canadian, there are so many things that just like were not passed down from our great grandparents or whoever the first generation
100%,
was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, not even just like in the Japanese community, but I'm sure like there's so many other cultures that live within Canada that don't talk about war and therefore don't talk about like a lot of things to assimilate, right?
Definitely.
And so there's definitely like a level of cultural awareness that has been lost.
Yes.
In our generations.
Definitely. And I think because we were forced to kind of try to be as white as possible as the Japanese Canadian community, I think it's almost shocking for our elders when third and fourth, fifth generation Japanese Canadians go to them with these questions like, where's our family from? Like, what happened to our family when we immigrated here? Yeah. Like our story, especially our story of our families in Japan, it's almost shocking for them because they just kind of figure that we're Canadian now. We are so many generations into being Canadian. We've kind of assimilated. We've kind of all blended in. To have us now ask them questions like that, I think is very, not necessarily jarring, but it's very like unexpected.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone's elders are necessarily ready to have those conversations or were even prepared to discuss things like that. And some of them might not even know.
Yeah.
So you're bringing up stuff for them, you know?
And that's another reason why community is so important with our generations.
Yes.
It's so important to like talk to other people, to share those experiences, because maybe if your elders or your family's elders are unwilling to talk about it, somebody else's elders will be.
Definitely.
And that's definitely what we're seeing as a trend, at least in the Hafu community, in the Hapa community. So many of like and there are very few elders left from that time, from the first gen.
Yeah.
Of the Japanese Canadians, but some, like the ones that are left, are starting to finally kind of come out of the woodwork and share their stories.
Yes.
And the Nikkei Center has been so great about cataloging those and keeping them on
They're
file.
doing such great work for our community.
And there's so much to learn from.
Definitely.
Because I think our generations are probably like two of the more vocal
And that's the thing too, being like complacent and not being very vocal about the things that you're experiencing as a community is very much a part of our culture. Definitely as Japanese Canadians, you don't make problems, you don't start things, you just kind of put your head down and just, steam ahead as best you can. So I think our generation, and maybe this has to do with us now being like 3 or 4 generations into being Canadian, we are much more vocal now. We are more vocal about the things that we experience, and we are learning now about all of the horrible things that have happened to our communities, and we're like, why is no one talking about this? Like, not in our community, not in the white community, like no one knows about any of the things that have happened to us.
There's a lot more like outrage around it. And it's so nice, because I think I had like a conversation with Jeff Chiba back in December, and we were talking about this, and he was saying like, there's like definitely a surge in the more vocal parts of our community every like other year, or somewhat every other year. There's a new request for redress from the war. There's a new so many like really amazing things are happening right now in the Japanese happening in the Japanese Canadian community right now. Like there's especially for the arts, there's now like a Japanese Canadian film festival.
Totally.
And there's always been like the Vancouver Asian Film Festival, but it's nice to have something that's specific for us, especially.
Definitely.
Like, I'm a filmmaker. My content will have a specific like outlet to go to if I ever make more films about being Japanese Canadian. Or of that manner. And I think he was also talking about like there's a lot of potential for future things happening for mixed race communities within the art community, so stuff like that, and that's really exciting. On top of that as well,
totally,
so it's not just people requesting like redress from the war. It's not just the outrage anymore. Now it's a lot of things coming from the outrage of our generations, and requesting the building of that community and the participation of that community. Definitely.
And so many people get their information through the media, and the fact that the Japanese Canadian community has never really had a chance to have the same opportunities as some other groups within the media world. Seeing now people coming up like yourself, people like Jeff Chiba, who are a part of our community and are telling the stories of our community, I think is going to be really, really important to the general public to gain awareness of the things that our community goes through on a day-to-day basis, and things that we've experienced in the past, which I don't hold anyone accountable for not knowing, because that stuff's not taught and it's not talked about in the media at all. So very exciting to see up and coming people in the Asian community, the mixed race Asian community, the Japanese community, seeing comedians now becoming super famous, directors, actors. I'm seeing more musicians that are mixed race Asian and are like proud and vocal about being mixed race Asian. It's so exciting. And
a lot of the leaders of a lot of the great things that are happening right now, a lot of the projects that are happening right now are like from our generation, the 3rd and 4th generation Japanese Canadians. There is the Suitcase Project. You've obviously heard about.
Suitcase Project.
Maybe you could talk more about it, because I've only heard about it briefly.
We're for sure going to do like a full episode on the Suitcase Project.
I love that for us. And there's also the HAPA Project, which is like a thing. It's like a published book. It's almost like Humans of New York, but it's just like mixed race people in a book, and it's like their story and what identifies them as a HAPA person. And like it's so great because it's kind of like a picture book, and you kind of flip through and you see all these people who look so different from one another, but you kind of read their stories and you're like, are they so different? And that's what's so beautiful about the mixed race community just in general.
Well, yeah, like there isn't just one way a mixed race person is supposed to look. So I think having a book like that and having the visual of all these different mixed race people just drives home the fact that there isn't some sort of like cookie cutter way that a mixed race person is supposed to look.
Yeah.
Just because, and I've had this said to me before, just because you're mixed race Japanese doesn't mean that I'm going to look like someone you know who's mixed race Japanese.
Yeah.
You know, we all look different. There's definitely some similarities, but we're all our own individual people with our own individual mixes. So we're not really going to look like carbon copies of one another.
No, like you and I, for instance, look completely different from one another, but we are both of Japanese Canadian like descent.
100%.
So what really qualifies looking Japanese, looking white, looking mixed?
Totally.
Yeah, because I was always like placed as a question mark until people knew what my last name was.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's funny because you would think with like just kind of like normal adult intelligence level that if you saw someone that had a Japanese last name and you looked at them and maybe they didn't look to you like a full Japanese person, I don't know what you would be using as a reference point, but if they didn't look like a full Japanese person to you, wouldn't you just automatically assume that they're probably mixed race?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think is going on?
Yeah. Like, I have a little sister who's turning 3 very, very soon, and I'm so glad that we're now coming into an age where hopefully this won't just be like a surge of vocal activity from our communities, and hopefully this will just be an actual ongoing conversation.
An actual movement.
Yeah, because it definitely pushed me to do the research that I've done about my family, or about my Japanese family.
Right.
And I'm really proud of that because it means that hopefully she won't go through the same level of confusion that I did.
Totally.
Hopefully she asks questions, and maybe I'll be that really annoying auntie who comes around and is just like
so
in
Japanese.
the face about it. Yeah, and I'm so thankful that there are Japanese Canadian artists coming out with like children's books about being mixed race, like let alone just being like mixed Japanese, but just being mixed race and what that means. Just not something that is brought up very much.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point. When you grow up as someone who's mixed race and you don't have a lot of your culture in your life and you don't have a lot of information being fed to you about your ancestry, you do almost kind of like miss out on something that would help you become like more whole as like an individual growing up, instead of feeling like there's this empty space and you're not quite sure why you feel a certain way, but it's because you have no attachment to your culture whatsoever. The younger generation having access to this kind of stuff now, it's probably hopefully going to erase a lot of that self-doubt that you have as a mixed race Asian, that you aren't a part of your community or you're not Asian enough to be Asian. Yeah,
agreed. We've had like a small conversation about this, but have you, I guess, what was your introduction to your non-white self? Like, was because your mom is like, is
my mom's Caucasian. Yeah, my mom's Caucasian.
Yeah. And your dad is Japanese. So.
Yeah. I think it was very similar with my mom. My mom, since my parents met in Vancouver, and that's where they started their family. My mom did initially, when they first got married and were starting to have us kids, she did like Japanese cooking classes at night. She, kind of like learned household rules, like taking your shoes off before you come into the house, and things like not getting into your bed with the clothing that you wore when you were outside walking around. You change into a different set of clothing. I felt like she kind of was always trying to have as much Japanese culture in our lives as much as she was able to, so I never really felt like she was trying to push, or not push, but you know, try to have anything super Canadian in our lives as we were growing up, outside of just living in a white community in Canada. But then my dad on his side also never really did anything to drive home the Japanese side. So it was almost like my dad was trying to make us assimilate more into white culture, and my mom was trying to be as like as helpful. Like my mom did not grow up eating rice at all, but every single meal we had rice. My mom does not like seafood. She cannot stand the smell of fish, but she always cooked fish for us. She always made like miso or teriyaki salmon for us constantly. We always had like ichiban.
Yes.
If we did go out to eat, it was always Japanese food. We never went for fast food or Western food. It was always some Asian food, but generally specific Japanese food. So I'm super thankful that I had that in my life. I think most of the drive of me trying to fit in was more just my own internal struggle of growing up in a white community and feeling like I don't belong, and having kids treat me a certain way because I'm not white, and just being like, okay, let's just try to be like as white as possible. Yeah.
In terms of like, because you have a niece.
I do.
Do you think you're gonna be like that, like, we're Japanese, like, auntie for your niece?
Probably. Yeah. I'm probably gonna be like obnoxiously Japanese with her, but just because at the moment it doesn't appear like she's getting a lot of Japanese culture in her life, and as much as like my older sister, who my niece is the daughter of, as much as she likes to kind of play off that she didn't experience negative things growing up being Japanese in a white community, she did. She had like a really hard time. She had bad things happen to her, you know, people treat her a certain way, you know, all the stuff we deal with being mixed race in Canada. But she very much wants to try to live that white aesthetic. And she herself doesn't have a lot of our culture in her life. Her daughter did not get like a Japanese name anywhere, no Japanese middle name. Her full name, first name, last name, middle name are all Caucasian. She's not dressed in any cute, like, you know, like baby clothes from our culture. And she's obviously like not going to learn Japanese. So I think I will probably be that crazy Asian aunt who's just like really driving home the fact that you're Asian. Which hopefully doesn't like rub my sister's family the wrong way, but I just know what I felt growing up, not having my culture in my life, and I would not wish that on anyone else. So I would definitely make the effort to have as much Japanese culture in her life as possible. I'm like, I think it's really great. I have a lot of hope for the future generations of mixed race people, especially as long as like the generations are becoming more and more vocal about stuff like this. Definitely. And hopefully like there will be a lot like hush around asking questions from the elders. At least, like, the elders anyway, like, there aren't a lot of them left. So a lot of those stories and lessons are left for us to teach the younger generations anyway. Right. I'm really excited for my baby sister to get older. And to be able to show her, like, the map of our footsteps on, like, how we got here and the name of the ship that we came on. Totally. Just, like, all of this information that I definitely did not have. Like, our family crest was something that none of us knew. Right. Until this past year. Yeah, I'm so excited, and I hope that she, like, asks those questions. And that when she does, I'm so excited at how prepared I'm going to be. Yes. Oh, you want to know about our family. Oh, pulls out, like, a full, just like, a billboard. Just, like, it's like a presentation. 100%. You press a button in the wall wall just flips. It's just your full family tree. It looks like a mortar board, but it's just, like, it's
like red string connecting everybody to each other.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited for the future generation. And I think that's it on Being Mixed for today.
I think that was good.
Thank you so much to everybody who's tuning in for our very first episode.
Our very first episode.
The Hafu It.